The Susan Wright case, unfolding in 2003 at Houston, Texas, presents a disturbing and complex narrative that highlights the devastating consequences of deep-seated marital conflict. The case involves Susan Wright's brutal murder of her husband, Jeff Wright, in a crime marked by its extreme violence and emotional intensity. This case sheds light on the broader issues of domestic abuse, the legal challenges in cases of self-defense, and the societal response to such tragedies. Background of the Wrights. Susan and Jeff Wright's marriage had been troubled for years before the violent incident that brought their relationship into the public eye. Their relationship was characterized by significant issues, including allegations of infidelity and substance abuse. Jeff Wright was reportedly involved in multiple extramarital affairs and struggled with drug and alcohol abuse. These problems created a tumultuous and often dangerous environment for Susan. Susan claimed that she endured years of physical and emotional abuse from Jeff. Her accounts included descriptions of frequent arguments, physical altercations, and threats of violence. The couple's issues were compounded by Jeff's substance abuse, which Susan argued exacerbated his erratic and aggressive behavior. The combination of these factors led Susan to live in a state of constant fear and distress. The incident. On the night of the murder, the events unfolded in a way that would shock and horrify the public. Susan Wright admitted to stabbing her husband, Jeff, 193 times in their Houston home. The sheer brutality of the crime was a focal point in the ensuing legal proceedings and media coverage. Susan's defense team argued that she acted out of self-defense, driven to a breaking point by years of abuse and fear for her life. According to Susan's account, she had been the victim of another violent altercation with Jeff that night. She claimed that she was acting in self-defense when she inflicted the fatal wounds. Her defense argued that the extreme nature of the violence was a direct result of the ongoing abuse and the perceived immediate threat to her safety. The prosecution's case. The prosecution presented a contrasting view of the events. They argued that the murder was premeditated and not a spontaneous act of self-defense. The prosecution's case was built on the argument that Susan Wright had planned the killing, motivated by a desire to escape her unhappy marriage rather than a reaction to immediate danger. The prosecution pointed to several pieces of evidence that suggested premeditation. For instance, they highlighted that Susan had purchased a new mattress and cleaned the crime scene after the murder. Witnesses and neighbors described the Wrights' relationship as troubled, with frequent arguments and Susan's growing frustration. This evidence was used to argue that Susan's actions were driven by personal grievances and a desire to start anew rather than a desperate act of self-preservation. The trial and verdict. Susan Wright's trial was a highly emotional and contentious affair, attracting significant media attention. The defense's portrayal of Susan as a battered woman seeking justice resonated with some, while others were troubled by the brutality of the crime and the evidence of premeditation presented by the prosecution. The jury ultimately found Susan Wright guilty of murder. The verdict was based on the evidence and arguments presented, which suggested that the killing was premeditated rather than an impulsive act of self-defense. Susan was sentenced to 25 years in prison, a decision that many viewed as a compromise between acknowledging the abuse she had suffered and the severity of the crime she had committed. The aftermath and societal impact. The Susan Wright case left a significant impact on those involved and the broader community. For Susan, the conviction meant years of incarceration, during which she would have ample time to reflect on the events that led to her imprisonment. The case also sparked discussions about domestic violence and the legal system's ability to address such complex issues. The trial highlighted the difficulties faced by victims of domestic violence who may act violently in extreme situations. It underscored the importance of recognizing and addressing signs of abuse before they escalate into such tragic outcomes. Advocates for domestic violence survivors used the case to push for better support systems and intervention strategies for individuals trapped in abusive relationships. Broader implications. The Susan Wright case is emblematic of broader societal issues related to domestic violence, mental health, and the legal system's approach to complex cases. It serves as a reminder of the need for comprehensive support systems for those affected by abuse, including counseling, legal aid, and protective measures. The case raises questions about the effectiveness of the legal system in handling cases where the line between victim and perpetrator is blurred. The challenge of addressing long-term abuse while ensuring justice for severe crimes remains a significant issue in criminal justice and social support systems. Domestic violence and legal challenges. Domestic violence is a pervasive issue affecting many individuals, often leading to severe and tragic outcomes. The Susan Wright case illustrates the complexities of dealing with such situations within the legal framework. One of the key challenges in cases involving domestic abuse is distinguishing between self-defense and premeditated violence. In the Susan Wright case, the jury had to weigh the evidence of long-term abuse against the brutal nature of the crime. The challenge was to determine whether Susan's actions were a desperate response to immediate danger or a calculated act driven by personal grievances. This complexity underscores the need for the legal system to address the nuances of domestic violence cases effectively. The role of advocacy and support systems. The Susan Wright case also highlights the importance of advocacy and support systems for victims of domestic violence. While Susan's case ended in tragedy, it served as a catalyst for discussions about improving support mechanisms for individuals in abusive relationships. Organizations and advocates work tirelessly to provide resources, counseling, and legal aid to those affected by domestic violence. Efforts to improve the response to domestic violence include raising awareness, providing better resources for victims, and developing more effective intervention strategies. By addressing these issues, society can work toward preventing future tragedies and ensuring that those in need receive the support and protection they require. The Susan Wright case is a tragic and complex example of how deep-seated marital issues can escalate into extreme violence. It reflects the broader challenges of addressing domestic abuse within the legal system and the need for comprehensive support systems for victims. As society continues to grapple with these issues, the hope is that lessons learned from such cases will lead to better prevention, intervention, and support strategies, ultimately reducing the occurrence of such tragedies and promoting justice and safety for all individuals affected by domestic violence. The case of Susan Wright and Jeff Wright serves as a sobering reminder of the profound impact of marital conflict and abuse. It underscores the necessity for continued efforts to address domestic violence, support victims, and ensure that the legal system can effectively navigate the complexities of such cases. Thanks for watching.